This is a long and short stitch. It's also known by several other names such as brick stitch, embroidery stitch, shading stitch, tapestry shading stitch, and the list goes on. It is worked on a series of parallel lines, and the first and the last row are a little different than everything in between. So I'm working from right to left. I'm going to bring my needle up on the third line down from the top. I'm going to take it back down straight up from where I came out on the top line. I want to move over just a little bit and come up on the second line down. Pull through. And then I'm going to go straight up from where I came out on the second line and go down on the top line. And then I want to go down, I want to come up on the third line again. It needs to be just a little bit over to the right from this last stitch. I'm going to go down on the top line, straight up from where I came up on the bottom, so here. So I'm trying to get a satin stitch look. I'm going to come back up on the second line down just a little bit to the right of where I'm going down on the top line. I'm going to go down on the top line, straight up from where I came up on the second line. And then I want to bring my needle back up on the third line down, and it's going to be just, I want to leave a thread's width between where this one is on the third line and where my next one's coming up. And back down on the top line, straight up from where I'm coming up on the third line. I want to move over just a little bit to the left, come up on the second line down. So what I'm doing on this first row is staggering stitches. I go long, short, and so on. I'm going to work this all the way across this row between the first three lines. It's a short one, the next one's a long one. I always go straight down on the top line. Go straight up from where I came up and down directly above it on the straight top line. And then move over just a thread's width to the left for each subsequent stitch. And I will just work all the way across. When I am finished working across the line, I will just take the thread to the back and knot off. I finished my top row, and it is a long and short stitch, long, short, long, short. The first and the last rows when you're doing this are the only ones that have long and short stitches. I've switched thread colors. It's just a lighter red because I'm going for a shaded effect. I'm going to bring my needle up on the fourth line down, which is the line that doesn't have any stitches to it. And I want to line up with my first short stitch from the right, or line up between the gap between the first and the third stitch. So I'm going to come up. I want to go down, preferably in the same hole as where that short stitch goes. Pull through. I'm going to come back up. On the fourth line down, I'm leaving a thread's width between. I'm lining up with the next short stitch from my first row. So I'm going to pull up, go down preferably in the same hole. Come up on the fourth line, lining up with the gap or with that the next short stitch, down. Same hole as where that short stitch began. Move over, leaving a thread's width between. I'm coming up on the fourth line, going down in the same hole right at the bottom of the short stitch from the first row, and move over. So what I'm doing is I'm filling in the gaps between the long stitches in the previous row. I'm going over I'm doing 2 lines. I'm skipping number 3, so I'm coming up on number 4, going down on number 2, and I'm just going to work all the way across, filling in those gaps. I have changed thread colors again, and I'm going to repeat the same process as I did for the last row. This time I'm coming up on my line I have drawn. I do have a space here. I want to match up with my long stitches from the first row, so I'm going to fill in outside my stitches from the previous row. So I come up on the 4th, go down on the at the end of my first long stitch. I'm just really filling in the gaps from my previous row. And they're all long stitches again because it's not my first or my last row. So it's just work all the way across, same way. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in this shape off camera with everything but the last row, so I can show you how to do the last row. I've put in 5 rows after my first color. There's nothing magic about that. It's just however much it takes to fill your space, and I'm working on getting a gradated effect. So I'm ready to finish off. I'm down to my bottom line, so I'm going to bring the thread up on the bottom line, go and right below my very first stitch, I'm going to go down in the same hole. I'm going to go over to the right and come back up on the bottom line. And then I'm going to go down, matching the stitch right above it, so that would be I would be making a short stitch this time. And you can use a stab stitch method if you prefer. I'm going to come up on the bottom line again, right next to the previous stitch. I'm going to go up and match the stitch that's straight up from that. So this time I'm making a long stitch. I'm going to come up again on the bottom line. Go down in the same hole as a stitch straight up from it, so I'm making a short stitch. So my bottom row is a long and short stitch all the way across. Come up right next to that. Go down in the same hole as a stitch right above it. And I'm just going to work across that last row that way to finish it off and give me a square, well, sort of square edge. And the goal on this, if you're working a square piece, is to keep your stitches vertical. You also want to keep them fairly close, kind of like a satin stitch. I got a little loose over here. You can see a little bit of the background fabric, but I can live with that. So this is another filling. It will fill larger spaces than satin stitch. This is not the irregular long and short stitch that you see in thread painting.